Hello, upper cervical doctors and students. Welcome back to the UCM podcast. I'm your host for today's episode, Dr. Bill Davis, founder and CEO of UCM Practice Growth Systems. So excited to be with you once again and talking about a important topic as it relates to upper cervical practice, and that's finding associates. And specifically, in this episode, we're going to be talking about why finding the right upper cervical associate is so difficult. And so let's get right into this. Often traditional recruiting methods fail or cannot produce the result that you're looking for your upper cervical practice. And we want to encourage you to do some things differently that we found to be successful in helping doctors to continue to grow their practices. Because at a certain point, the only way to grow your practice is to add another doctor. You run into capacity issues, you run into long waiting lists. We see doctors sometimes with, a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6-month waiting lists. And that's not good for your community. Having to wait for a long period of time before they can get in to see you. It's not good for your practice because you would be able to help those people a lot sooner. It would be better for your practice financially and every other way. And it's not good for the other doctor that could be in your practice, helping people learning and growing as a doctor as well. And so we want to help you to find the right upper cervical associates for your practice so you can continue to grow and so more and more sick and suffering people can find the hope and healing that they need. And so let's talk about why it's so hard. Many doctors experience this where, they get to that point. They know they need an associate. They probably needed an associate months ago or even years ago. And then they finally say, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to start looking for an associate, right? So they post on maybe their technique job board, maybe their school's job board. Maybe they share it with some colleagues. Maybe they go to a job fair at their technique conference, and maybe they interview a few candidates, but months later or even years later, sometimes they still haven't found the right associate. And the problem may not be your practice. It may be your recruiting strategy. It may be the approach that you're taking to find that right person. Because remember, you're not just filling a position. When you're hiring an additional doctor to join your practice, it's not about just, finding someone who has a license, right? You want someone who aligns across every dimension of your practice, from your clinical standards to your long-term vision. When all of these different things align, the available candidate pool becomes significantly smaller. And some things you want to consider when looking for an additional doctor to join your practice is their philosophy, right? What is their philosophy when it comes to upper cervical and the principles of upper cervical and how you view them in your practice and in your personal chiropractic philosophy? Because you want someone else who is at least congruent with that, right? How about your technique? You have standards within your practice of how you do your upper cervical technique, and you want to make sure that you find another doctor that wants to achieve those similar standards. And what about patient care? You want to find someone who matches your approach to outcomes and has your same heart for patients. And also you want to find someone who fits your culture, right? Every practice is a little bit different, and every community and team is different. And so getting the right personality fit for your culture that fits the environment that you've built. And also someone who is aligned with your long-term vision and mission for the practice is important as well. If you're looking for someone, for instance, who you really want to have be a long-term associate or eventually take over the practice or whatever it may be, and you're interviewing everyone who just wants to be there for a year or two, then again, that's not a great fit. And so, this is a lot of the reasons why upper cervical recruiting is different. General chiropractic recruiting starts with a broad, open pool of licensed chiropractors. Technique preferences and philosophy can be flexible. Many qualified candidates are actively searching job boards at any given time, right? So it's, there's about 100,000 chiropractors in the world who, license chiropractors. And so it's a lot bigger pool to fish from when you're a general chiropractic practice. But when you are a practice that only 3,000 to 4,000 people specialize in upper cervical, and fewer students and recent doctors and so forth have that mindset, it requires more. Upper cervical recruiting requires more. It requires an understanding for that person to have a desire to learn upper cervical care or already have some basic understanding of upper cervical care, a genuine belief in the clinical philosophy, some appropriate technique training, or at least an openness to it, the ability to communicate the value of upper cervical care to patients, and a career goal that fits what your practice is offering. So specialized practices like upper cervical chiropractic practices demand a specialized recruiting approach. And, the other thing is to consider is that a candidate pool is fragmented, meaning it's not just coming from one particular place. It's distributed across different career positions and situations and whatnot. And so understanding that, hey, you know what? A great associate doctor may be a student, right? Someone who is coming out of school who can do a preceptor position with you first, for instance, and then grow into an associate. Or it may be someone who is a recent graduate. They're going right before, it's right after they've graduated and getting their licensing and all that type of thing. Or sometimes it's a doctor who's just seeking more. Maybe it's an experienced chiropractor looking for a practice that better matches their values. And it may be that it's someone who, for instance, is in practice growth stage 1 who just has not been able to break out of that initial stage of practice and realizes, it may be better for me to work with someone who already has an established system rather than continuing to try to reinvent the wheel in my own practice. Or another group is transition candidates, chiropractors who are considering a move into upper cervical care for the first time. Many great associates that we've seen over the years are doctors who started as full spine chiropractors and realized that upper cervical was a better long-term approach for them and made that shift, learned upper cervical, and became really great associates within an upper cervical practice. So many of the best candidates are not browsing job boards. They have to be found through relationships and through outreach. And this is why job boards often fall short. Job boards can generate applicants, but they rarely create a complete recruiting strategy for upper cervical practices. And so, a posting can advertise an opportunity, but it can't build the relationships often necessary to really get the right person. And so, this leads to poor match quality or a transactional mindset where you get some candidates who are just, only interested in how much money they're going to make. No cultural insight into really what they're passionate about and how it aligns with your practice. And you can also end up with some heavy competition on job boards where you're just competing against every chiropractic practice in the country. And so that post and hope recruiting cycle doesn't usually work great, right? So recruiting usually in this circumstance it starts too late, meaning that you've known you need an associate for a while, but you've kind of been putting it off because it seems like it's going to be a big pain, and in many ways it is if you're trying to do it all yourself. And so you kind of wait till you have no other choice. Like, you have to do it. You haven't had on a vacation in years, or every time you take a vacation, you lose tens of thousands of dollars, whatever it is. You finally get to that point where you're just sick and tired of it, and you say, okay, I'm going to post a job, right? I'm going to create a listing. I'm going to distribute it. I'm going to hopefully get some applications, and I'm going to just hire the best available person from a limited, self-selected pool. And a lot of times that ends up being a not great fit for the practice, because the relationships with these candidates is not as ingrained as it could be. But really, what you ideally want is recruiting to begin before the need becomes urgent. This is challenging for an individual practice, though. So when recruiting begins generally only after the practice is overwhelmed, the pressure of immediate relief distorts the decisions, and urgency becomes really the hiring strategy, which is not a great hiring strategy in general. And that can cost you in bad hiring decisions way more than even a temporary gap in your staffing. And so this can lead to rushing the process, or lowering standards, or just overselling the opportunity because you're just, desperate in some ways. But instead, ideally, what you would want to do with every upper cervical practice is have an ongoing candidate pipeline. Effective recruiting is not an event, it's a continuous relationship building activity. A strong pipeline means you always have people at different stages of readiness. So when the moment comes, you're choosing from a curated group rather than starting from scratch, right? Because ideally what you want is some people that are ready now, right? Candidates that are actively seeking and fully aligned with you and your practice opportunity. You want some people who are near term, meaning they're finishing school soon, or technique training or whatever in a few months. You want some people who are 6 to 12 months out. They're exploring options. They're building clinical experience. And then you want some long-term pipeline people who are students, early career doctors that are just getting started, maybe first-year students or whatever. And so having all of these different people connected into a pipeline would be an ideal situation for every upper cervical practice. And so there are ways that you can do this as an individual doctor, and a lot of it comes with making sure that you are regularly involved with schools. Sometimes that's challenging depending on where you're located, but if you are located near schools, we highly recommend you're involved with the schools. Now, the struggle with that is doctors who need associates are usually overwhelmed with patient hours and don't have a lot of availability to go to schools. So it kind of ends up being a catch-22 in some circumstances. But schools do provide a unique opportunity to connect with future doctors before they begin a formal job search, often before they've committed to sometimes you can show students the power of upper cervical and why this is the best specialty that you could possibly focus on as a chiropractor, and begin to really move them in that direction during their school years. These early relationships can lead to stronger long-term alignment, right? So if you have the availability, go to student clubs, go to upper cervical clubs specifically, go to career fairs, or do campus visits, get in the classroom if you can, do some club presentations, make yourself available as a preceptor, right? Get established as a preceptor with the schools that are close to you, so you can do those preceptor externship type opportunities. And then, really be a mentor, right? Focus on education and helping students to become successful in practice. And, in building relationships also with faculty and student leaders. All of these types of things are really important. And like I said, the biggest issue with this, because it does work and this is a great approach, is the time that it takes to do this, right? And a lot of doctors who need associates don't have time to really do this effectively. Another thing to do is make sure you're engaged and involved with your technique organizations and building those professional relationships, right? Upper cervical community is highly relational, right? It's a small group of us who are part of this community. The strongest candidates are often discovered not through a posting, but through a trusted introduction or relationship. Trust travels through relationships, and your next associate may already be one conversation away. And so staying engaged with your technique organizations, being at your conferences and seminars so you can meet students and you can get to know them and you can find out about, what they're all about and what kind of commitment they have and what kind of person they are and personality and how committed they are to the technique and to upper cervical in general. And, and then also just having referrals, right? If you're talking to other doctors, if you're engaged in your technique organization and you can talk to other people about, oh, well, do you know that student, or who do you know, or those types of conversations can lead to more candidates as well. But I also want to introduce you to something that we've developed over the last year and a half, and that's our associate talent network. And many of the things that I've talked about throughout this podcast today, we have built into our associate talent network. And so what it is we have gradually been adding, I think we have over 150 people within our network we've got students in there, we've got recent graduates, we've got doctors who are, wanting to make a transition. And we've built this associate talent network so that you don't have to go to the schools and build all these relationships and do all these things, so that if you come to us and you would get access to our associate talent network when you sign up with us to do your associate recruitment for you, right? Our associate recruitment program gets you access to our associate talent network. And the way we've built this is through creating student-focused content. And I wrote a book called Your First 5 Years as a Chiropractor that we've been using at chiropractic schools. We've gone to pretty much all the upper cervical focused chiropractic schools throughout this year. We've gone to a variety of student events and these types of things. We've given presentations at colleges. And as we've done that, we've collected more and more people and more students and doctors and recent graduates and so forth who are interested in upper cervical and are interested in joining upper cervical practices. And so that's allowed us to begin to build these relationships. And the way we build relationships is, once we get them into our talent network, is we do a career planning call with them. So our team meets with them. We find out more about, what they're looking for, what type of technique they're interested in, what parts of the country they're interested in, when they're, what is their career plan? Are they do they want to do a short-term associate position, long-term associate position? Are they looking to eventually buy a practice? Are they, all these different things that you need to know about candidates in order to more effectively match them with good opportunities for them. And we're doing this on an ongoing basis. We have consistent relationships with chiropractic colleges where our team is going to these colleges and meeting more and more students. So we're meeting them at different stages. We've got, first year, second year, third year students. We got recent graduates and doctors. And like I said, so that we can place candidates with you as quickly as possible. That's really our vision, is to get this talent network to the place where when you come to us for associate recruitment, we can get somebody in the office as quickly as possible. And ideally, if we can get you a preceptor, that's even a better situation in many ways, because you can have someone in your practice for 3 months or whatever, 2-3 months, who is unpaid labor, right? They're there, they're helping you. It's part of their schooling, but you're also getting to know them. You see if they're a good fit. And so in many ways, it's the best case scenario of a 90-day trial where you can really see if this is a great fit for your practice. And so whether you're looking for that situation or you're looking for an associate who is licensed and ready to go, either way, we're our associate talent network is great for that. And it's a lot more than just a list of resumes, because we actually know these candidates. Like it's this isn't a static database of resumes, for instance, right? We're consistently talking with these candidates. We keep these potential candidates engaged over time so that when your practice is ready, the relationship already exists with us, with them, right? This approach creates a living talent pipeline, not simply a static database. So, as I said, ideally for every practice, you would have one of these pipelines. But to build one of these pipelines is just a lot of work for an individual practice, especially one that is already busy and needs another doctor. And so we want to provide that for all the upper cervical practices around the world. And so ways that we keep the students and doctors in our associate talent network engaged and connected with them is we provide them with career resources, right? We give them tools and guidance. We give them educational content on upper cervical philosophy and clinical development, and we encourage relationship building with with the practice's mentors. We help them to see, like, hey, ideally what you want is someone who's going to mentor you. And we know that the doctors who come to us who are looking for associates, that's what they're looking to do, is to be mentors to these new doctors. And the career planning conversations, that is really the key, really gives us that personalized approach of planning and opportunity matching that is unique. Because the resume is really only the beginning, right? It can only show you so much. It can show you, maybe a few things about them, but it can't show you what their heart is for patients and what they're looking for when it comes to a team culture, and whether or not they're aligned with your mission and your vision for all of these types of things. And so what we really try to do with our associate talent network is to evaluate the whole person so we can get a better picture of who they are. And then when doctors come to us and we get a good picture of what they're looking for, then we can more effectively match. And so, we talk to them about philosophy. We talk to them about, we try to understand their personality as best we can. We want to engage with them and find out more about the culture they're looking for when it comes to the practice that they're looking to join. And we really focus in on their goals. What are you looking to do in this position is a big part of our process. Because you ultimately, when you come to us for associate recruitment, you want to understand what the candidate wants, right? You want to understand, are they looking for mentorship and growth? Are they looking for a long-term role? Do they, are they the kind of person that could be a leader within your practice? Or do they just see you as experience before opening their own practice? So understanding these types of things can only be done over time, right? And so having the conversation early with them, really getting an insight into them as a independent third party, right? Where they're not telling you what you want to hear in an interview. They're just telling us truly what they are looking for. And then that helps us to more effectively match candidates to opportunities. Because, when you're in an interview with a potential candidate, a lot of times there are a lot of mistakes that are made, like, just kind of talking more than listening, or focusing only on technique, or not really getting clear on expectations, or ignoring cultural fit, or skipping reference checks. These are all common things that happen, especially when doctors are busy and not able to really deep dive in the process. And that's Another part of our associate recruitment program is not only do we get really good candidates from our associate talent network, but also we work with you on the full process. So we help you to define the position very clearly. Then we help you to interview candidates very effectively. And then once you hire them, we help you to develop a very strong 90-day onboarding plan with them as well. Because we don't want to just place candidates, we want to grow upper cervical practices. And that's what our associate recruitment program is focused around. Because you want to interview for evidence, not just first impressions, right? And so understanding everything as it relates to their resilience and their ability to handle conflict and their ideas about patient experience and their clinical convictions and their career vision, all these kinds of things are all things that we talk about with candidates during our associate recruitment program process, our associate talent network process, and career planning calls and so forth. And obviously you want to talk to clients or candidates about these things too, but it's good to already have some clear understanding of that on the front end. Because the right associate that would join your practice, they can expand your mission. And that's really what you want, right? You're looking for another doctor so you can serve more people, so you can reduce dependence on you as the owner, so you can elevate your patient experience, so you can develop future leaders, so you can enable sustainable growth. And that's really what our heart is behind our associate recruitment program, is we want to bring hope and healing to sick and suffering people for the glory of God. And we found that one of the best ways you can do that is by expanding a practice from, say, one doctor to 2 doctors, right? That can dramatically impact your ability to serve people in your community, or from 2 doctors to 3 doctors, or 3 doctors to 4 doctors, whatever. It's every time you add a doctor and you can fill their schedule, that's more people getting help in your community. And that's what we're all about. And so what we want to encourage you to do is to stop recruiting alone. If you need an associate in your practice, if you know it's time, or maybe it's beyond time, our associate recruitment program was built to help you be more intentional and more successful in recruiting. As I mentioned, we're going to help you clarify the opportunity, define the role, the expectations, and what makes your practice worth joining. We're going to connect you with candidates, reach students and doctors through our associate talent network and our other ways of recruiting candidates. And we're going to help you evaluate candidates beyond just the resume, right? Give you clear understanding on interviewing and getting a clear picture of what they're about from our earlier interviews with them, even before you started the process with them. So then you can navigate with confidence, right? Moving through the recruiting process with expert guidance at every stage. And then even when you get a candidate or you get someone who you've hired, we're going to assist you even then with a 90-day onboarding plan, with biannual review strategies, job scorecards, all the things that you need to keep a associate doctor engaged and focused on getting great results within your practice and helping your practice to continue to grow. And so to learn how the UCM Associate Recruitment Program can connect your practice with qualified, aligned candidates before the need becomes urgent, go to ucmgrow.com. That's ucmgrow.com. And you can schedule an initial call with us. We'll talk we'll talk through the UCM Associate Recruitment Program with you and give you a clear understanding of all the expectations, the costs, and all that stuff, and then we'll get started for you right away at getting a doctor into your practice. Thank you so much, docs, for being with us today. We appreciate you so much. And as we always say around here, go team upper cervical.